Now that I've completed most of the game in the First Berserker Khazan, there's a ton of things I wish I had known not only when I started but as I progressed, because there are actually a lot of things in the game that they don't fully tell or explain to you how they work. Whether it's gear and how specific abilities and stats work with your build, or even massive mistakes that can lock you out of some content whether it's intended or not. If you're like me, these are some things I wanted to know but really just didn't understand. Now the first thing ideally since the game launched that I was confused about was some specific things around your damage calculations and how you can build out your character and your gear to get the most overall damage. Specifically when it comes to changing our attributes. Now changing attributes for certain pieces of gear, let's take our spear for example. You see we have % damage increase, attack damage, and damage multiplier increase. Keep in mind when you actually go to your blade nexus and you look at your Khazan's memories, you can actually again upgrade your stats so that way you can even upgrade damage increase % and damage multiplier increase %, and it's really confusing kind of how these work. Ideally think about this, we take our spear with our total attack damage of 602, we will then essentially apply an overall damage increase based on that base attack damage value, for instance that 820 you can see in the bottom right. Now the way damage increase % and damage multiplier increase % works is damage increase % is sort of an additive multiplier. Essentially damage increase % acts sort of additively, so let's say our attack damage is 100. Once you calculate in damage increase to that, you'll get 27.6% of that total attack damage, which is even 100, meaning you'll end up with 127.6 overall damage. Now keep in mind there are other damage stats that add on to this. For instance, if you're also doing a rear attack and you can see rear assault damage increase by 10%, that means you would take 10% of your base attack damage again and then add that 10% on to the total of what you already have, meaning 10% of 100 is 10, so we'll add that 10 onto our total, meaning we'll have 137.6, and further additive damage buffs like this will continue to add onto the total. The difference for damage multiplier increase is this is actually applied last in the damage calculation step, meaning once you've done all of your regular additive damage buffs where they all scale individually off your attack damage and then add to your total damage, let's say eventually you have 156 total attack damage. That 156 number includes your base attack damage and all of your attack buffs, percentage bonuses, etc. The damage multiplier increase of 22.3% in our case is going to multiply times that entire number and not just the regular standard 100 base attack damage that we had, which is again how damage increase is calculated. So it's really twofold. You want to make sure your total overall attack damage with all the buffs is scaled obviously as high as possible, but again also then making sure you scale your damage multiplier increase as high as possible as well, since it does multiply all of your damage and gives you essentially extra free damage, being that it is a multiplicative damage stat. Another thing as I progress throughout the game is once you talk to Danjin and end up collecting a lot of the jarlings, eventually as you progress throughout the campaign and collect more, he will actually move from this spot. It probably took me about 12 hours to realize that he was actually just up here the whole time. So if you can't find Danjin, keep in mind he will move around the map as you progress and unlock more jarlings. Also keep in mind his materials section where you can actually buy a lot of the epic materials for crafting. Only have these set amount of materials, so once you buy them out, they're essentially gone and you can't buy them from him again. One thing to keep in mind are these are actually gated behind certain content. So for instance, you actually have to progress far enough in the game and collect enough jarlings to unlock specific material. Again, that may mean that a higher level material may be unlocked a little bit later, depending on the amount of jarlings and progression you've already made. But again, keep in mind this could be patched in the future, but one thing to keep in mind if you're playing recently as release of this video, until it's patched, do not find all of your jarlings, meaning if you look in the shop here, you can obviously get the best jarlings once you've collected all of the max that you can collect. Currently the game is bugged, so when you collect all of the jarlings possible, Danjin's shop option that you can see right here will actually then become unavailable. Until they patch this, do not collect all of your jarlings, otherwise you'll be locked out completely of this entire menu, the entire consumables menu, and all of the materials as well, which means you're basically just stuck until they patch the game and fix it. One other big thing I wish I'd paid attention to that I didn't really even bother looking at most of my playthrough is how these consumables with Danjin actually work. And that's because they're not super self-explanatory. They basically kind of tell you how they work, but I felt like most of the campaign, they didn't really work at all. The two big ones I wish I'd gotten early are the Grave Robber's Lantern and the Undead Hunter's Lantern. The Undead Hunter's Lantern, specifically when you have it illuminated, prevents nearby undead from reviving, which honestly is one of the biggest helps because there are a lot of maps where there are a ton of undead enemies in them, which means you basically have to kill them and then hit them again so that they don't revive. And especially if you're getting mauled by a bunch of them, it can sometimes be not only really annoying, annoying, but can end up in a super powerful enemy being revived, meaning you have to fight them all over again. Additionally, another one that I used for a long time that I didn't really understand why it wasn't working was the Grave Robber's Lantern. Now this actually illuminates around surroundings and actually guides you to things like treasure chests and collection items, but how it works isn't as self-explanatory as it seems. For instance, once you get close to a jarling in a jar, for instance, or for that matter any other collectible, once you get close enough, your lantern will actually glow blue. Keep in mind, sometimes this is kind of hard to see if you're wearing an armor set with a cape, but it can immediately alert you that you're basically right near a jarling or some other collectible that you could easily miss if you weren't using this. Unless you're running around using the undead lantern in an area specifically, I would always have this on and equipped. Not only that, but it actually alerts you even farther than that by essentially using your controller vibrations. So your controller will actually vibrate once you get close enough to specific things. For instance, once you get close to a chest or an area of lacrima that you can collect, or a jarling or any other real collectibles, as you get closer to them, your controller vibrations once you get closer will actually be more and more common. This way you can know if you're running farther away from a collectible, or that way you can tell if you're getting closer if the vibrations increase. Another thing is, once you unlock Danjin in this area, you can actually come up here even pretty early in the game. I wish I'd known about this earlier. This would have been really cool. You can actually walk right through this little area right here. It will open up into this little area with a chest overlooking all of the crevice, and you can actually open this for a free executioner set right off the bat. That's actually pretty good, especially when starting the game. Keep in mind, this is scaled towards a little bit lower level. This set is actually really good early on because of the fire resistance that's insane, the brutal attack damage increase, and the brutal attack health recovery, which means you can heal yourself for a lot of health, especially towards the beginning of the game, and even later if you were to craft an upgraded executioner set. You can also pair this with brutal attack reap, which actually recovers additional health when using a brutal attack from head on. If you combine that with the skill on the executioner set, and also if you combine that with our status for our soulstone upgrades, which give us additional health recovery increase, you can see ours is buffed here by 18%. This means you can heal a ton of your health insanely easily just by doing a brutal attack, and honestly it's one of the coolest sets in the game because of that. Also keep in mind, a phantom that pairs perfectly with this is actually Adelheid the Philanthropic, and when you unlock this phantom you can actually get up to 20% additional health recovery increase, meaning you're healing for even more, and you can heal like so much of your health bar, it's insane. And also when Awaken, you can actually get a netherworld energy completely free when using a brutal attack when you don't have any. So if you ever run out of netherworld energies, just doing a brutal attack can heal you for all your health and can give you an entire healing item. That means if you can get an enemy or boss down to do a brutal attack again, you can use your one remaining netherworld energy, again healing almost all your health, executing the brutal attack, healing even more health, and then getting your last netherworld energy that you just used replenished and all back again because of this awakening, as well as a 20% decreased damage taken, and in some ways almost makes you invincible for a certain period of time. Now, something you absolutely need to craft, and maybe even not for the reason you think, is a bard set, and that's because the bard set actually gives us a bunch of additional benefits, but maybe not in the exact way you would think. For instance, as you go later through the game and you go to craft sets, some of the primary sets that you'll be crafting that are the really good ones will be, for instance, like the Fallen Lord set. However, crafting it takes those Fallen Lord's claws, which means you have to farm bosses for them. The problem with this is when you farm bosses, sometimes you'll get a drop and sometimes you won't, especially with harder bosses later on in the campaign. Some of these boss fights will take a significant amount of time, meaning you'll have to farm them over and over and over again, with the idea in mind that sometimes you won't even get a material drop, which can make that really frustrating. No. By using the Bard set, you can not only guarantee a ton of extra lacrima, which can help you to farm tons of lacrima or XP for extra levels, increase your overall weapon drop rate, giving you an insane 80% stamina recovery rate when unscathed, and the big boy give you a high grade item drop rate percent chance, meaning most of the time now, if you're wearing a full Bard set, you won't have to worry near as much about going in, fighting a boss to farm for any given materials without receiving one. This will almost for the most part guarantee that when you fight a boss to farm for materials, you will get at least one of those materials from the boss, as well as additional items and XP from them in general, so you have to have a set of this on standby, especially for farming out those epic materials. That alone will save you tons of time and frustration. Now, a couple things about crafting that you really need to be paying attention to, because I always said a lot of lacrima because I didn't really care to look and had no idea about this feature. If you look at the bottom on PlayStation 5, you can actually click View Attributes. So that way when you're upgrading random attributes to be specifically what you want, you want to be checking your view attributes button. This is going to show you the list of available attributes for a piece. That way you can actually know what kind of attributes you're going to be able to unlock with this specific gear. For instance, if I was looking for damage multiplier increase on all my gear, guess what? If you're looking on the helmet and you look at the available attributes list, you actually can't get damage multiplier increase. So when you're sitting here spending your lacrima to try and get it, and you literally physically can't, you're wasting your time. So make sure that you're paying attention to this. Not only that, but if you notice we uncheck this max stamina option, we have a full list of available attributes. If we actually check this option to then select max stamina as the one we're changing, and we click on view attributes again, you can see a lot of these are grayed out. Meaning that if we looked here and we're like, oh, you know what? I want to get rear assault damage increase. And then we go to check this and we start rolling it. Guess what? It's actually grayed out and we can't get that on this specific piece of this gear. And why that is because some of these random attributes have essentially like specific categories. So this top category acts as like a damage category. For instance, it can only kind of roll like specific things. For instance, it can roll damage increase, all of the damage modifiers, and some of these stamina damage modifiers as well. If we actually click on stamina, again, we can actually do some of the stamina damage and stamina modifiers, but not any of the ones up top or the defensive ones. And then again, by selecting the helmet, you can see we really only have the option for stamina and again, defense modifiers here. So just keep that in mind that you check these to know before you roll what you're going for, because otherwise you're wasting a lot of lacrima, a lot of time, and not getting the upgrades that you really want. Now, another thing is gear, and I'm not going to tell you never to augment your gear, but I honestly think it kind of sucks. If we take this level 54 Decayed Greatsword and then go ahead and augment that with a level 124 Sacred Greatsword, you would think we'd get a lot of levels. No, we would actually only get 3 from level 54 to level 57. The real way to use augmenting, let's assume this level 38 sword is our current level, is our current sword for our level, but we've now found maybe 2, 3, or 4 level 57 swords, or even maybe let's just say level 40 or something. If you have the full sword, a full set with the random attributes the way you want it, you don't have to replace it and craft a whole new one. The best thing to do is take a bunch of swords in this case that are higher level than this one and essentially use them to power level this up to the current level of swords that you're finding, so you don't have to craft an entire new one. That way we can say we want to take this level 38 sword and get this level 57 sword and then upgrade ours to level 40. Keep in mind it's going to take probably like 6 or 7 of these swords to get it up to our current level. But again, this can keep you from having to craft a bunch of pieces all over again, especially once you get gear higher level that require epic materials that you have to farm for bosses. Now, the last big thing I wish I had known is specifically around not only some consumables, but around items as well, especially when it comes to resistances, because trust me, this will save you a ton of headache on every boss that you fight, especially the hard ones that are just going to destroy you with ailments. For instance, the first thing I can start with is keeping at least one type of every single resistance necklace that you get. If you find a resistance necklace, check to make sure you have it in your stats. If you don't, you better save it, because trust me, you're probably going to need it later. Let us take this necklace of sealed fire. Even though it's only level 43, it gives us 150 fire resistance. So when we're fighting a boss, I know one specifically in general that can completely obliterate you and stack fire on you like over and over and over again. Having this necklace just to put on specifically to fight that boss is going to be an absolute lifesaver. And you can see currently our fire resistance, let's just say it's at 245 down here. If we actually were to go use a fire resistance elixir, which can only last for a specific amount of time, the fire resistance you get from the amulet is permanently while you have it on, not to mention you can also buff it with the elixir on top of that. You can see if we apply this fire resistance elixir and then we go look at our status, we now have 545 fire resistance. If we add an additional 150 on that, we would have almost 700. That means if we're going through an area or fighting a boss with fire, basically, this is going to make us not totally immune to fire, but make it way, way harder for it to actually stack an ailment on us, which means we then have to use less fire cleansing potions. I wish I'd been doing that, especially with the amulets during the beginning part of the game. Those are all the things I wish I'd known through my first playthrough that really would have made my life a heck of a lot easier. If you enjoyed this, drop a like, check out this amazing spear build or these mistakes you shouldn't be making in the First Berserker Khazan right here.